She presents What's Your Sign? Today we're going to be talking about Cancer. Everything you ever wanted to know about having a Cancer sun, Cancer moon, or Cancer rising, and just general Cancer information. We'll start with the basics. The picture on the bottom left-hand side is the symbol for Cancer. Cancer is traditionally seen as being ruled by the moon, and that's significant. The moon is responsible for both the tides and the seasons, and it's the seasons that allow us to cultivate, grow, and harvest food, which of course is what nourishes and sustains us. The other important thing about the moon is that it's the most visible in the darkness, right? In the middle of the night. And if you think about it, during ancient times, that would have been the time that we were the most vulnerable to exposure, to predators, just to the outside world in general. And during that period of time, we would have had to rely on two things. One, we would have had to learn to tune in and tap into our inner resources, our inner knowing, and trust our intuition and our feelings. When you can't see what's going on around you, you have to learn to feel it. And two, we would have had to learn to rely on really close personal relationships, create networks and support systems so that we're not alone in the dark, so that we are, have a community to bring us through the night. Cancer is seen as ruling the fourth house of the zodiac. The fourth house is the house of emotion, it's the house of family, and it's the house of our inner worlds, our emotional inner worlds, and our sort of deepest thoughts and feelings, the things that we won't necessarily share with other people. The myth of Cancer is sort of an interesting one. There was a goddess named Hera, and she was in this wicked cool fight with Hercules, and Hera basically kept trying to kill Hercules and kept losing because he was super strong. And so what she did is she made him go crazy. She made him go insane. And during this period, I guess she probably made him go crazy in hopes that he would self-destruct, right? And during that period of insanity, he did some really bad things. He made some really bad choices. And in order to be forgiven for what he had done, he was told he had to perform 12 tasks. And one of those 12 tasks was that he had to defeat a hydra, which was like a gnarly-looking water serpent. And so during that task, when Hercules is trying to defeat the hydra, Hera sends this huge crab down to help the hydra and try and defeat Hercules. And Hercules stomps on the crab, kills it instantly. Hera feels guilty, puts it back into the sky as a constellation. And I think the thing about this myth that's interesting or important is that it's not really about what happens. It's about all of the emotions that are encapsulated in that very short, small myth, It's about the fact that, even if you just take Hercules, he goes from this character who's incredibly strong and powerful and confident to this person who becomes incredibly vulnerable, who's being attacked by his own mind when he goes insane because of Hera, And if you look at Hera, it's this person who, creates connections and allegiances in order to defeat Hercules, right? She gets people to follow her. And I think, she has a sort of similar energy, is that, on one hand, she feels this experience of vengeance, but on another hand, she's cultivating loyalty and connection with this crab, right? And there's obviously this guilt that comes up, because why else would she take this crab and give it the honor of being put in the sky afterwards, right? So strength and vulnerability, loyalty and betrayal, mental unease, this feeling of emotional powerlessness, all of those things are encapsulated in that myth. And I think a lot more if you dug deeper into it. But the point is that the myth of Cancer isn't about the events that transpired, it's about what the characters in the myth would have felt as a result of those events. Now we look at the water element. So every sign has an elemental association, and Cancer is associated with the element of water, which makes perfect sense if you're sort of looking at it. For two things, water has a connection to emotion and water has a connection to intuition, and those are two of the most important parts of having a Cancer experience. The elemental association is sort of like the vehicle through which those signs move through the world. So how you experience things. And water signs tend to experience things through the emotional body. They tend to experience things through the spiritual body, through intuition and through connection with other people. And there's 3 signs that are considered water signs: Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. And because all 3 have that shared experience of life through the emotional body, through the intuitive body, there are some natural connecting points. They speak a similar language, and those relationships can be just a little smoother or easier because you understand each other's perspective, because you share it. So we'll start with the Cancer sun. So the sun is in your birth chart. Your sun sign is who you are in stillness when no one is around and nothing is affecting you. And so as a result, it's how you define yourself. And in some ways, it's the purest sort of form of yourself. And so when you're listening to this video, if you have a Cancer sun, what you want to pay attention to is how are you showing up for yourself? So how are you showing up in your own life? How is the energy of Cancer that you're running working for you versus working against you? And how could you run it in a cleaner, higher vibration? The Cancer moon is an interesting moon sign. The moon naturally rules Cancer. So having a Cancer moon is like having 2 times the same energy in the exact same spot in your chart, right? It's like intense and it's powerful. And in the case of Cancer moon, it's also it's emotional, right? So Cancer moon, everything that I'm talking about, what you want to pay attention is how you show up in your relationships and how you show up for yourself when you're having an emotional experience, when you're feeling something. And so what you want to pay attention to is, when you're triggered, are you showing up in a way that's not serving you and not supporting you, or not serving others and not supporting others? So listening to this video as a Cancer moon, you want to pay attention to the language that your heart speaks and what it's trying to say to you through your behaviors. And then finally we have Cancer rising and ascendant. The rising sign or the ascendant is the lens through which the world sees us. It's our personality. It's what's most obvious about us to other people when they first meet us. That's what a rising sign is. The challenge, of course, being that, it's not always how you perceive yourself. And sometimes it can be like the opposite of how you perceive yourself. So if everybody sees you in a way that you don't see yourself, then it can be traumatic, it can be difficult, and it can be challenging. And so I think when you're listening as a Cancer ascendant, part of this is about accepting that this is a part of you. Even if it's not a part of you that's obvious to you, it's a part of you that's obvious to other people, and it's an important part of you. And so if you accept that it's a part of you and you practice allowing, then you come to a space where you are accepting yourself and you're loving yourself through it and learning how to run the energy in a healthy, healed way instead of running the energy from a place of hurt, from a place of woundedness, from a place of shadow, or from a place of triggering. So I want to tell this story, which I think really nicely sort of encapsulates what a Cancer experience is. So if you kind of imagine you're sort of running, you've just left your car and you have your keys in your hand, you're running from your house to your car, right? And everything around you, you're paying attention to every sign around you. It's the middle of the night. You have no idea if you're safe or you're in danger. You're just running for it, right? And you feel that sort of those heart palpitations and that anxiety and that fear. And then, you finally, after this really intense period of time, you finally reach your doorway and you slide your keys in your doorway. And there's this feeling of relief that comes when the door finally opens and you can close yourself back into your house. And then what are you met with? This. You're met with people who love you, you're met with a roaring fireplace, you're met with community, you're met with safety, you're met with connection and joy and love and all these beautiful experiences. And I think all of those together really beautifully encapsulate Cancer. It's not just about family. We hear so much about how Cancer is about family, but family's not simple. Family's not a whole bunch of people hugging and telling each other they're pretty, okay? Family is complex. It's really complex deep, meaningful relationships that you need to learn to navigate, right? And so a Cancer experience is about everything. It's about that feeling of fear that comes when you're running from your, car to your house and you can't see what is around you. And that feeling of safety when you slide your key in that lock, and that feeling of security when you walk through that door and find that you have found people who are like you, who understand you, who are connected to you. And traditionally, Cancer was sort of seen as a sign that's responsible for family, but I think there's something mildly problematic about that, because Cancer isn't just about blood family. It's not just about the family that you're born into. Cancer is about finding your tribe. It's about finding people who are like you, finding people who speak the same language as you, finding people who understand you, finding those connections that tie you into the world and that make you feel safe. And sometimes those connections are with your biological family, but sometimes they're not. And Cancer is about this quest to find that security and that comfort that comes from connection to people who are just like you, who get you. But you, of course, as with the myth, you have to come through that period of not feeling safe and of feeling vulnerable in order to get into that space of safety. So Cancer has a relation, obviously, we've talked about this a lot already. Cancer is related to emotion more than any other sign in the zodiac. But what I like to say is, like, Cancer is really well captured by the crab, which is the symbol for the crab, right? So Cancer has an outside shell, has an outer shell that protects it from the world and that protects its emotions from the world. So even though Cancer has an emotional component, and even though we talk a lot about Cancer and emotion, that doesn't mean that your emotions are clear to everyone else around you, because you have a protective shell. You have parts of you that you hide from the rest of the world. And the purest energy of Cancer, the most beautiful energy of Cancer, is someone who's found balance between letting people in and protecting your emotional body. So figuring out when your shell should be up and when it should be down, when you should let people in and when you should push them back. That's pure Cancer energy, is finding balance between giving and receiving, okay? And between sharing yourself and holding yourself back. And I think I want to talk a little bit just during this period, like we talk about Cancer and emotion a lot. And I think that because Cancer has this relationship to emotion, it tends to be a little bit easier of a sign for women to run, because women are given permission to emote. Women are given permission to feel. Women are given permission to, be seen as emotional creatures, right? And men quite often are shamed for those same experiences. So when you have men with Cancer energy, quite often you have more shell. You have a thicker shell. You have, someone who feels things really deeply, who feels everything that happens in their life, but feels that they have to put a wall up to not show everyone what's going on beneath the surface, right? Because if you're socialized out of, your feeling body and you're a Cancer, then you're kind of being told that you have to hide parts of who you are. And it creates an imbalance where the shell is really, really thick and you're not letting anybody in. So Cancer energy is learning who to let in and how to let them in and why to let them in. And it can run in a healthy way when you make good choices about who to let in. It can run in a less healthy way and a less healed way when you have a shell so thick that you don't let anyone in, or when you have a shell so thin that everyone can see right through you. So Cancer is about finding a healed space there. But yeah, so it's this experience of emotion. And one of the things that I think is really cool about Cancer is that, like, you wouldn't necessarily think it, but Cancer energy has a huge relationship to creativity. Some of the biggest, best selling authors are Cancers or have really strong Cancer energy. The same is true with performers, like actors and things like that, and artists. And the truth is that if you find a way to infuse emotion in art, then you make people feel something. And we want art that reflects our emotional bodies. And so Cancer energy, if it can learn to infuse that emotion, to make people feel, they can be really, really brilliant in the arts or in creative fields. And, a lot of actors, for example, they work in the realm of Cancer. They have, Cancer in quite often the 10th or the 5th or the 6th houses. And the reason is because they work in emotion. Their whole job is to feel things and to show other people what they're feeling, right? And of course, those feelings are constructs. They're feeling what their character would be feeling in that moment, but they work in the realm of emotion, and that's really related to what Cancer is. And like I said, there's a huge connection to creativity, using emotion, fusing emotion with creativity, and putting it out into the world. Cancer energy, like I talked about earlier, it's that feeling when you walk through the door and you see your family. But the truth is that Cancer energy is about finding your tribe, finding people who are like you, finding people that you can connect with, finding people that speak the same language as you. When I say that, I mean like see the world the same way and use the same words to articulate it, or use the same style of communication to articulate it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you literally have to speak the same language, but you have a common thread that ties you together. And usually with Cancer energy, that common thread is sameness. So it's this search to find people who are like you. It's the search to find somewhere that you belong. And sometimes, of course, that's found in your family. Sometimes it's not. And part of Cancer experience, part of the really sort of heavy work, the heavy karmic work of Cancer experience is making peace with the fact that your family may not be your tribe. But that doesn't mean you're supposed to let go or walk away. It means that you're supposed to figure out how to have these really deep, powerful, emotional connections with people who you might not always understand, but you can never walk away from. So it's this connection that's, essentially almost unbreakable, and making peace with the nature of that connection, making peace with letting someone in that far, and making peace with the fact that you're tied together for life, no matter what happens. So I really like the picture of the little lioness who's given a good hiss there. Cancer is about protection, and it's about boundaries, and it's about defenses. So I just talked about this a minute ago, the sort of idea that Cancer is a crab that has, this outer shell, right? And that is protecting itself from the world, protecting that sort of soft inner emotional body from everything around it. And if you think about it, Cancer also has little pinchers, which are going to bite out and protect itself from the world as well, right? And I think that's a really important part of Cancer that we don't talk about as much. We talk about Cancer as being emotional and having an emotional experience of life, but we don't talk about the fact that in order to have that emotional experience of life, you have to have some walls up, and you have to have some protective forces that make sure that you're safe in experiencing it. So Cancer is two things. Cancer is has this energy of protecting itself from the world and making sure that its emotional body is safe, because there is almost always a feeling of vulnerability when it comes to Cancer, this feeling of fear and vulnerability, because there is this sort of softness inside, and you have to be careful about who you let in. So it's protecting yourself from the world, protecting yourself from outside dangers, but Cancer also has a very, very strong relationship with protecting those you love. So, it's sort of like the pinchers, making sure that no one's, getting in, no one's hurting the people that are already in your heart, nobody's hurting the people that you consider family, and this willingness to sacrifice yourself and do everything that you possibly can to make sure that the people that you care about are protected and safe. And so healthy Cancer, again, we talked about this a little bit before. Healthy Cancer learns where to put their boundaries and how thick they should be and what requirements they should have for letting people in. And Cancer, when it's running in a less healthy kind of form, either lets everybody in or lets no one in. So Cancer is about finding balance and finding a way to have boundaries that are supporting you and supporting other people, and allowing you to experience the world instead of just protecting you from it. Cancer has a really close tie with nurturing. So, Cancer energy, it's community energy. It's an energy of making connections with people who are just like you, finding your tribe, and then supporting your tribe, protecting your tribe, and making sure that everyone's okay. So, pure, clean, healthy, fabulous Cancer energy wants to help people. It wants people to feel loved and safe and secure, and it wants to build communities where everyone takes care of each other. And it doesn't necessarily mean big communities. When I say communities, I don't mean like necessarily countries. Like certainly there's some Cancers who are activists who want to support, creating really strong social systems. But Cancer is at its core is kind of smaller than that. It's having small groups of people, tribes of people, families full of people, handful full of people who all kind of have each other's back and who don't walk away no matter what happens. Pure, Cancer energy, it's this energy that you don't walk away no matter how messy it gets, no matter how difficult it gets, no matter how ugly it gets. You never walk away. You hold on, you hold strong, you protect your own, you make sure that your own are safe, and you make sure that they're cared for and tended to. So Cancer energy is a nurturing energy. It's an energy that wants to give to other people, that wants to support other people, that wants to allow other people to feel safe and secure and loved. Yeah, and so just sort of continuing on that thread, Cancer is about learning how to love and to be loved. It's about learning connection, vulnerability, and how to stick it out. So, like I said, it's about learning how to open your heart and when to open your heart. It's about learning how to when to be strong and when to be vulnerable. It's about learning how to trust someone else with your heart, how to trust someone else to love you. And it's about learning how to love someone else. I think really pure, clean Cancer energy would be around unconditional love, like learning how to love someone even when they do stuff that hurts, even when they do stuff they shouldn't do, learning how to love purely and unconditionally. And Cancer energy is also about learning vulnerability, which is about, like I said earlier, when to let your shell down, when to have it up, who to tell your stories to and who to hold them back from, all of that kind of stuff. It's about using your intuition and trusting your intuition when it comes to other people, trusting your gut instinct about other people and listening to it, and coming into a space where you're willing to let your guard down, where you're willing to let someone else in, where you're willing to have an emotional, intimate connection with someone and trust them not to hurt you. And then I think also Cancer energy is about not walking away when you've been hurt. So I think, the thing about family is, it's kind of amazing. No matter what happens, no matter what they do, no matter how you feel about them, there's this sense that we have that no matter what, going home to someone, even if you're in the middle of an argument with them, is still going home if they're your family. And I think part of Cancer energy is making peace with that. It's making peace with the fact that everything is not always shiny and bright. Sometimes there are arguments, sometimes there's a feeling of betrayal, sometimes there's horrible things that happen, but you're inextricably tied to those people for the rest of your life. And Cancer energy is about making peace with that. Making peace with not walking away when things get tough, making peace with sticking it out, making peace with difficult emotions, and holding on to your kin. Holding on to your tribe. Doesn't mean staying in relationships that are unhealthy. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean continuing to have contact with your family if they were abusive. What it does mean is making peace with that connection with your family and learning what it's like to have a relationship that you can never walk away from. Even if you're estranged from your parent or your child, that relationship never goes away. It's always sitting inside of you. There's an emotional connection that can't be broken when it comes to some of these really intimate relationships in your life. And Cancer is about making peace with that. And like I said, learning how to love and how to be loved. Cancer, like I said earlier, has the moon is the moon and Neptune are the two most intuitive planets, although technically the moon is not a planet. And Cancer is ruled by the moon, and there's a really strong tie around, for Cancers, around intuition and inner knowing. You're connected to something bigger than yourself. And I think that, part of Cancer is learning how to listen, learning how to pull out of your thoughts, pull out of the stories that you tell yourself about what things mean, and come into a space where you learn to find silence, where you learn to listen, where you learn to trust your feelings, where you learn to trust your inner knowing, where you learn to trust your inner resources. Part of that is the sort of clean, healthy expression of Cancer energy, is learning how to tune into those things and trust them even when they're not logical and even when they don't make sense. And then we sort of do this for like every video. It's like, what happens to Cancer energy when it's hurt, right? So it could be something simple, like it could be hurt in your chart, as in it could be intercepted. It could be in the 12th house. You could have some really uncomfortable aspects to it. Let's say your sun is in Capricorn and your moon is in Cancer. That can be a challenge for some people, or, maybe there's some, squares. Anyway, uncomfortable aspects. So what happens to this kind of energy in your life if it's not well supported in the rest of your chart? And so usually we look at that in terms of like, where's the ouch, right? And so Cancer, one of the biggest ouches is interdependence, neediness, insecurity, and conformity. Like I talked about earlier, Cancer energy is about finding your tribe. It's about finding people who speak the same language as you, who understand things the same as you, who are like you, right? And so Cancer energy, when it's running in a healthy way, judges anyone who's not like you. It tries to make everybody the same so that it can feel safe, right? So there's this can happen in two ways. Either you judge everyone that's not like you and try and get them to become like you so that you feel better about yourself, or you just become whatever environment that you're in. So it can be this energy that has this sort of fluid presence that's constantly changing to adapt to whatever circumstances that it's in. And that's not the worst thing in the world, unless it's betraying yourself to do it. So, having the opinions of whoever you're with at the time, seeing the world the same as whoever you're with at the time. There's those couples that get together that start looking like each other. They start wearing the same clothes. They start liking the same movies. They sort of lose themselves in their connection to other people. And I think that's what Cancer has to be afraid of, is losing themselves in their connection to other people and holding on to the authentic parts of themselves and realizing that a Cancer experience is about learning to be loved and to love. And part of learning to be loved is learning that you have to maintain who you are and allow someone to love you for who you are, instead of adapting and becoming who you think they need you to be in order to love you. So there's an element of interdependence there as well. So like this sort of idea that like, only being okay when everyone else around you is okay, only feeling secure when your entire family feels secure, all of that kind of stuff is the interconnectedness of Cancer. So, and also sort of that neediness, like constantly needing outside validation in order to feel okay, needing other people to tell you that you're okay. So, part of this sort of energy of Cancer is this drive for connection, and that drive for connection is fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's making sure that you're not losing yourself in order to connect to other people. Yeah, and I think this is another big one. Cancer, where's the ouch addiction to the familiar? So Cancer wants to find a safe space, right? So it wants to find emotional safety and security. It wants to find physical safety and security. And I think that really easily you can become addicted to what's familiar. So, and that's not always good, right? Like, because sometimes what's familiar is something that's hurting you, right? But you keep going back for more again and again and again because it seems safer to go back to the familiar than it does to branch into new territories that you haven't explored before. And so it's figuring out as a Cancer how to create a familiar space inside of yourself, or how to create a familiar space in your house so that you can start to take risks and do things that are outside of your comfort zone so that you can grow as a person and so that you can contribute to the world and make it a better place. Where's the ouch? Emotional eating and learning how to self-soothe. So, as I talked about right at the beginning of the video, the moon has a relationship with nurturing and food, right? And so someone who's strong Cancer energy, particularly someone with a strong Cancer moon, can turn to emotional eating. So trying to self-soothe with delicious food. And I think, to be honest, that there's very few people on the earth that don't have some sort of experience of emotional eating, but you just have to be super careful of it with a Cancer and learn other ways to self-soothe, right? So Cancer energy, if it wants to self-soothe, it can be, it sometimes turns into that emotional eating, but there are lots of other ways that it can manifest. Sometimes self-soothing for a Cancer is just letting yourself feel your emotions without judging yourself for them. So sometimes self-soothing is literally having a good cry. Sometimes self-soothing is asking for a hug because you probably really need one, or having someone, sort of hold you or cuddle you, or having phoning your sister or your mother or your brother, your aunt, or something like that. So there's other ways to self-soothe. You just want to use that Cancer energy to do it, right? And part of using that Cancer energy is learning how to mother yourself, learning how to treat yourself like you would if you were a 5-year-old kid, to talk to yourself with that kind of love and acceptance, to behave towards yourself with a kind of love and acceptance, to nurture yourself with food that honors your body. All of that kind of stuff is about learning to self-soothe for Cancer. Whereas the individuality, boundaries, and grudges. So, like I said earlier, boundaries become a huge issue with Cancer when it's in not like a healthy, shiny, happy place. And so you have to be really careful with Cancer energy that you understand and can see your own boundaries. What's the difference between you and other people? Where do you end and other people start? What's okay and what's not okay? And learn how to articulate those to other people, to stand up for yourself and to set healthy boundaries. And to not step over other people's boundaries, to allow them to feel what they're feeling without trying to fix it or change it or shift it or heal it. Just allow them to experience what they're here to experience, and you experience what you're here to experience as well. So that sort of nurturing, mothering energy in Cancer, or it can be, just, I say mother, and I'm careful with that because I understand that there's just as many male Cancers as female Cancers. So it's a nurturing energy. It can be a mothering energy, but really it also has that protector angle, which is like a good dad, right? Who just loves his family to pieces and wants to make sure that they're safe and protected and all that kind of stuff, right? So either of those two kinds of energies, you have to be really careful that you're not overstepping someone else's boundaries and not holding back from them experiencing difficult things in life by protecting them from the world, or not holding them back and, smothering them with attention and affection so that they can't learn to do things for themselves, right? You have to learn when to let go of people and when to give them space. And I think that's a really big part of Cancer, is learning how to be part of a collective but not lose your individuality, learning how to set boundaries and learning how to respect the boundaries of others, and also not holding on to grudges. So, this comes up a lot in this sort of stuff about Cancer, is like holding on to past hurts. I mean, if you're Cancer, you're naturally very connected to your emotions, and so it makes perfect sense that it's hard to let go of your emotions. It's hard to let go of past hurts. It's hard to let go. Sometimes it can be hard to let go of past loves. It can be, hard to let go of people who made you feel things really, really deeply, whether those are really healthy feelings and happy feelings and shiny feelings, or whether those are more uncomfortable feelings. It's hard to let go of the people that made you feel them in the first place. And part of Cancer energy is learning to let go, is learning not to trap that emotion inside of you and to let it flow out of you so that you can open yourself to new worlds and new experiences as a result. And now we look at sort of possibilities. So, what does Cancer look like when it's happy and shiny and in its highest form or at its highest vibration? The picture on the top left-hand side is the one that I used in the first slide, and I think it's my favorite picture to describe Cancer. It's got this sort of protective elements of these hands sort of standing between this storm, this lightning, this challenge, this difficulty, and this earth that obviously is like shiny and shiny and happy and, vibrant and well-nourished and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like Cancer is those hands. It's the space that protects us from the outside world and nourishes and cultivates the inside world, right? And I think that a healthy Cancer is someone who understands that boundary, who's capable of being that protective force, who's capable of nourishing, both protecting and nourishing themselves and other people, right? Pure, clean Cancer energy is the best parent that you could possibly find. It knows when to hold on and when to let go. It knows when to protect and when to pull back. It knows, how to cultivate and create an environment that people can thrive in. And pure, clean Cancer energy learns to do that for the self as well as others. Learns how to create an environment that you can thrive in, right? The picture right below it, one of the things that I think is so magical about Cancer is that it has the ability to bring emotion into everything, right? And if you're running really, really clean emotions, if you're running like lots of love and joy, contentment, excitement, faith, all of those things. If you're running those energies really, really strong, then everything that you say and everything that you think and everything that you touch gets to feel them too. And I think Cancer has this incredible ability in its purest form to emote, to allow people to see how emotion can make the world a better place. To allow people to feel things, to allow people to experience the emotional body in ways that other signs don't necessarily experience them. So I think that Cancer has the ability to change the way that people feel, and Cancer has the ability to master their own emotional body. And I think that's a really big part of the Cancer experience, is learning how to control your emotions, learning how to use emotion to help and support other people, learning how to use emotion to help and support yourself. All of those things are part of a Cancer experience of life. The picture beside that one, the guy who's painting in the suit, I like that too. I think Cancer has the ability to access non-linear knowing. It has the ability to access this really creative, dynamic part of the self where you can show the outside world what emotion looks like through art and through performance and through all these different things. And I think some of the most fascinating people are the people who have learned to blend emotion with creativity and artistic ability. They make us feel. And I think that, everybody likes someone who can make them feel, right? And it's not always like happy, shiny feelings. I mean, yes, of course, we love the person who, makes us feel this incredible joy and love. But sometimes we really think it's amazing the person who sings a song that makes us cry. It's a release, and it's self-honoring, and it honors other people when we allow them to access their emotional bodies so that they're not sort of clogged inside them, so they can be experienced the way that emotions are supposed to be experienced. And I think Cancer has access to that through creativity. And lastly, we look at the top right-hand picture, and I really like this one because, digging into your intuition, your intuitive knowing, your inner wisdom, your inner resources, your inner knowledge, a lot of times it feels like you're sort of grasping in the dark. Like you don't really know what you're holding on to. You can't quite get what the message is that you're getting, it's like there are 1,000 different doors and you don't know which one to open in order to get into the flow of your life. And I think the most beautiful thing about Cancer energy is that Cancer, at its core, in its purest form, can find silence, can find stillness, can find a space where they can listen and they can hear the beat of the universe, where they can hear everything that's going on around them, and where they know exactly what door to open and exactly what key to grab to get that door open. So Cancer and intuition is really powerful, and it's really important. And I think sort of an element of like sacredness to it, this ability to connect to something bigger than yourself, this ability to hear the beat of the universe, to hear to connect to your inner wisdom, to your inner knowing, to understand, the fleetingness of this period of existence, and to move outside of this perspective of this sort of third dimensional being living in a physical body and access something bigger than that, something greater than that, and then help other people to do the same, help other people learn to listen, help other people learn to open to the flow of life. Thanks for listening. This is Bonnie with Heal with Astrology, and this was our Cancer video. Stay tuned for our upcoming video. Next week we'll be talking about Leo. Thanks so much.